Hey everybody, I realized that in the studio I didn't record an intro and outro to this episode. So this is the intro to the Dr. Allmand podcast episode about him and Apex Payment Solutions. It's a really fantastic episode. It's going to be a two-parter. So stay tuned after this one's over for next week, which will be the second part of it. And I also wanted to share a story about merchant payment solutions just to drive this home. Multiple times in my professional career have I helped a dental practice owner, and they've had something like $1 million to $2 million a year in practice collections that has been ran through a credit card. That credit card, let's say on a $2 million, let's say 4% rate finance charge on that. On $2 million, that's $80,000 on an annual basis just for credit card fees. So if a provider can get that down to 2%, they get from $80,000 down to $40,000. It's a $40,000 savings on an annual basis just by changing the credit card processing fees. So it is an important thing. It's an often overlooked thing because it happens so often and it's not something you pay a lot of attention to. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode. I'll see you on the other side. Hey, Teeth and Corners, I got a really exciting episode for us today. One that is really popular in terms of the different pieces that are happening out there in everyone's business today. And it's something that is maybe one of the most common things that happen in your business that needs to be looked at. And one of those things is every time somebody swipes a credit card at your dental practice. What happens if you think about it in terms of just how many times that happens in a day? If you're a busy practice, it can be tens to hundreds of times a day that this is happening. And every time that credit card gets swiped, there is pennies going out the door. We don't know how many pennies sometimes. It can sometimes be confusing. Sometimes that's on purpose. That's the reason I have on the call with us today, Dr. Zak Allmand, who is the founder of Apex Payment Solutions. And he's got a really compelling story, a really interesting story. He's a practicing dentist. He has walked the line that many of you have either walked before or are currently walking or are about to walk. And so he's a fantastic guest. He agreed to come on today to share his story, as well as the story of Apex Payment Solutions, as well as just in general, the day-to-day of being a dentist in this ever-changing business society. Dr. Zak, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. So for the uninitiated to the legend of Dr. Allmand, give us your backstory, give us the lore of how everything happened with you.
There's no legend. I feel like I just tripped into everything, honestly. No, that's not true. I graduated dental school in 2005, but my first year was 2001, and everybody knows 9/11 happened in 2001. So I was actually skipping class, watching ESPN on my living room couch when the Twin Towers came down, and I'll never forget that day. And about 3 weeks later, I'd been in contact with some of the recruiters for the Air Force and the Army looking into doing the HPSP scholarship. So I went into the recruiter. I was like, sign me up. And they're like, well, let's just keep you in dental school and we'll just pay for school. I was like, hey, that's even better. So I spent the next 6 years in the Air Force, deployed to Afghanistan, where I was doing root canals out of tents, and we built a hardened facility. I outfitted the dental clinic. And once I got out of the Air Force, my wife and I at the time moved up to Indiana because we had started a young family and we're moving back to where our roots were. She's also a dentist, and bought a practice with a buddy who actually brought the opportunity to me while we were at a baby shower of a mutual friend. And so everything just fell into place for practice ownership for me. And what we did is we bought a well-established fee-for-service office, and we quickly realized, oh my goodness, what are we going to do to make this loan payment? Are we going to be able to pay ourselves? This is the struggle that every new practice owner encounters, or people that are like thinking about practice ownership. You're taking a leap into the unknown. So the practice we bought at the time was a $1.2 million producing office, and the overhead was 72%. There were two older docs that had just kind of let things slide and gotten comfortable with the position and where they were. And so what we really quickly realized is we've got to drive the overhead down. We got to look at ways of increasing our revenues. So my partner, we really diversified our skill sets. He kind of looked at, okay, what can we do to add procedure mixes to the office? What can we do to keep things in-house? And I looked at how can we drive down our costs? And through that process, over the past 11 years, we've driven down our overhead while increasing our profitability. So as it stands today, we're a $2.8 million practice with an overhead that hovers between 36 and 39% every month. So we've really trimmed all the fat and really ensured our profitability. But for a long time, probably that first 6 months, I actually developed an eye twitch and couldn't sleep. because of all the stress of practice ownership. And so I'm very well versed and intimately have knowledge of the struggles that we're all going through every day with business ownership. And like you said, the ever evolving business of dentistry is changing every day. The landscape has changed greatly since COVID. And so there's a lot of new trends in dentistry that we need to keep up with if we want to stay profitable. One of the pieces of our overhead that I immediately saw as a glaring standout was the credit card processing fees. And as I researched into those, getting different pitches from companies, something just seemed off. And I just quickly realized how non-transparent and, for lack of a better word, shady the industry could be, especially, towards dentists. We all know about the dental tax with equipment, the dental tax with supplies. There's a dental tax also with merchant services because we don't fully understand or grasp the financial pieces of the business because we aren't trained in it in school. So there's a tendency to be taken advantage of. One company was just feeding me an absolute line of malarkey. And I said, you know what? I think I can do this better. And I think that you're doing us a disservice. So I'm going to take what you do. I'm going to do it better. And I'm going to take all of your clients. Fortunately for me, I had a friend that was in the banking industry. We formed this company really at first, like I was telling you, just to provide this service to my friends, my colleagues from dental school or from the Air Force. I never envisioned that we'd now be a company servicing over 4,000 dental offices across America in all 50 states. But it's been a great ride. And one of the reasons it's been a great ride is because I feel good about what we're doing. I'm taking the same approach to merchant services that we do to providing patient care. I like to be able to sleep at night knowing that I'm providing my patients with the best service and I'm providing them with an honest service. And the same thing, I like to know that I am educating my colleagues, providing them with options. And at the end of the day, if they decide to go with us, great. But at least they're equipped with the knowledge to make the best decision for their practice.
Love it. Yeah, it's a great story. And I've got a lot of questions in terms of the different pieces of it that I think would be interesting to all the tooth and corners out there. It's such a compelling thing of, I felt like it wasn't fair, so I started my own. I think that's awesome. Not too unlike why I started a CPA firm. I wasn't the user of a CPA firm. I was running someone's CPA firm. And I just really didn't like how we provided service. And I was like, I feel like we can do a better job. I feel like we can provide more value than a typical CPA firm does. And we can do it somewhat similarly in terms of price structure of what a normal CPA firm does. So I went and started Tooth and Coin. I never thought that we'd be at 400 plus practices that we help out with, but here we are and still growing. I started with a business partner as well when I started Tooth and Coin. We only lasted like 6 months as partners and we ended up splitting up. There's an old saying that partnerships are called ships because they always sink. Talk to me about making that decision because that's a little bit off the beaten path of what a lot of people say to do nowadays. Maybe there's more literature out there nowadays, but doing a $1.2 million practice and going in with a partner, a lot of people would say, hey, that practice is not large enough for a partnership. Would you tell people to go down the same path you did with that, or would you say that was a unique situation?
Definitely a unique situation. We saw definitely the growth potential in the practice. The patient base was there. The doctors were referring out a lot of procedures that we both knew that we could do. So we saw the potential there. It helps. My partner's just a great guy. Like, we are very in tune and in sync with how we do business and how we operate on day to day. Like, let's be fair. Honestly, the only thing that has saved our partnership over the past 11 years, why it's been successful, is because day one we said, no matter what, we're 50-50, 50-50 profitability, 50-50 everything, split down the middle. We're going to be here the same amount of hours. Doesn't matter if you're doing a full mouth reconstruction and I'm doing 2 surface fillings. We split the profits no matter what. As long as we're both putting in the same effort, we should both reap the same rewards. And that's coming from, the practice was a 2-doctor practice, but they basically ran 2 separate private practices out of the same practice. And we could just see like that there were teams within the practice. One assistant was this doctor's assistant. This is the other doctor's assistant. And, they'd bicker back and forth, fight over supplies. And we're like, nope, this is the team. We're Monon Family Dental. It's the family. And so we've drawn a hard line with that. There have been ups and downs. We've had some little hurdles in there. And especially as Apex has grown, it created a little bit of, not tension, but just it shifted the balance in the practice because I was putting more effort into Apex. Actually, this week, I've dropped back a day from the practice. So now he's practicing 4 days a week. I'm practicing 2 days a week. So what we did was we just shifted the percentage ratio. So it's all based off of the time. And he knows he's probably going to be seeing more patients because he's in the office diagnosing more and just through the hygiene. But I also know that the days that I'm going to be there, I'm going to work my tail off to carry my weight in the practice, right? So I'm going to be double, triple booking myself to just make sure that I'm not left holding the bag. So We have the same mentality of wanting to provide the best, wanting to carry our weight. But it's a hard thing. And you're right. What's the average dental partnership last? 4 years? It's low.
There's an old saying that all partnerships end, so it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, and that's true. There may come a day that our partnership ends, but it's going to be a mutual decision and we're going to walk away friends. I know that. He knows that. It's just the way that we operate and the mentality that we have. I love the partnership because what we've done is we've diversified our skill set. He's placing more implants. I don't place implants at all. Restore them all day long, but he places our implants. He does more complex surgical cases. I plan all of our Invisalign cases. The cosmetic cases, we kind of do 50-50. That's what I really enjoy doing is complex treatment planning. But even if I'm treatment planning things, I'm going to refer the patient that I treatment plan. Let's say we need number 19 extracted in an implant place. Dr. Cleveland's actually going to handle this piece of this. That just builds respect with the patient because they're like, oh, if Dr. Allmand tells me that I should go see his partner, that he will do a great job, I'm going to trust that and I'm going to get that treatment done. And so we keep everything in-house except for perio surgeries. And that's really helped us to increase our profitability without breaking the bank on CE or taking time away from the office because we know that, hey, Grant, I'm going to go to this Invisalign course because it's going to help us treatment plan these more efficiently, maybe get more cases. Great, because I'm going to benefit from that. He's going to benefit from that. It's a team win. And so just having that mentality has been awesome for our practice.
Yeah, if you've got a practice that's got enough patients and you've got that kind of yin and yang type of a situation of like, you're the yin, he's the yang type of thing, then it can work out awesome because if you have enough patients, then you've got such an active treatment base to be able to have for all those different types of treatment plans that can be taken in-house and that can be great production and things like that. So yeah, that's fantastic. You're obviously a high-performing business person to be able to run a dental practice as well as a company as successful as Apex Payment Solutions. So in terms of like decreasing the overhead side of stuff, talk me through some of the other things that you did that helped with the fighting of overhead, because obviously the conventional wisdom is that in terms of push, it's typically easier to raise production than it is to lower overhead. And the example that I give to people now is if you got $1 million practice and you can shave 1% of your overhead off, you're going to save 10 grand. That $1 million was generated from, maybe 1,000 to 1,500 patients. You're only having to get $10 more per patient to be able to get the similar amount of revenue on the other side of it. So which is the lower fruit to pick in terms of that? And since your side of that was the overhead side, what other things did you find simple ways to be able to control your overhead?
The biggest component for me is in-office milling. Because of my experience in the military, we were early adopters of the CEREC system. I implemented that at 3 different bases. I kind of spearheaded that campaign to do same-day dentistry. And so we brought that to our practice. Actually, about 2 years into practice ownership in 2016, we brought in OmniCam back then. And we do about 70 units of fixed a month. And eliminating not only the lab fees, but the chair time, the temporary material, the after-hour calls. There's just so many components to same-day dentistry that people don't look at the value of. I wouldn't do dentistry today without same-day dentistry. I would not. And I'm a big fan of the CEREC system just because that's the ecosystem that I have been trained in and I train other dentists in. But it's been a practice builder for us. We've gotten referrals from patients because of the same-day dentistry. They appreciate the technology that we brought into the practice. One of the things I think, piggybacking on that, is just adding technology to the practice has actually allowed us to drive down our overhead as well. We were having problems with our Invisalign impressions being rejected and they'd lead to a delay and then we'd have to have people come back. So we bit the bullet and got an iTero, and that's just increased the efficiency of our workflow. But adding technology and increasing efficiency has led to more productive chair time, which inherently drives down your overhead. Because if you look at overhead, it's a percentage. It's not strictly driving it down. Your overhead will inherently decrease if you increase your production and your collections. Now, at this point, with our in-office milling equipment paid off, we're looking at $28 a block for a crown. Everything else is already paid off. That just sliced our overhead. We've always been efficient with our staffing as well. We have 3 assistants, 2 front desk, and ideally 3 hygienists. Let's not get into that because we just lost 1.5 of them. We're struggling with that. But especially post-COVID, I talked about the landscape of dentistry changing since COVID. Staffing costs used to be like 27% of overhead, I believe. It's just skyrocketed, especially in our area. We're almost paying our hygienists double what we were paying them in 2014. Truthfulness and transparency, we're a fee-for-service office. So we can roll with the changes in costs more easily than a PPO office can because we set our fees and we set the value of our work. So that has softened the blow of the increasing expenses that we've seen. And everybody's seen it across the board. Supplies, PPE, everything has gone up because of the COVID tax. And now it's going to be the tariff tax. And so our costs are going to continually increase. And as a PPO office, you'll reach a point where you just can't do more dentistry or get reimbursed at a higher rate because Delta hasn't increased their reimbursements in a decade. Cigna has dropped reimbursements 30% in some areas. So I saw a statistic the other day where the average dental salary was $186,000. And that just blew me away because when I graduated dental school in 2005, it was $175,000. How is that even possible that we haven't kept up with inflation? And it's because reimbursements haven't gone up. And a lot of offices are now PPO. And so you really, especially as a PPO office, have to look at, so I call it breathing room. You raise the ceiling by increasing your production and collections. You lower the floor by lowering your overhead. The space between is the room that you have to breathe, which is your profitability. And so you have to look at all components to increase that breathing room. And at some point, you're going to be doing as much dentistry as your chair time will allow you to do, or as much as the insurance reimbursements are going to allow you to do. So even if, as you said, you only have to increase your production $10 per patient to make up that 1% overhead, what if you've already done that and you're maxed out? Let's say you're $1 million practice. What is the average overhead now? I think it's creeping up on 70%. It used to be like 64% for dental offices. So you're doing $1 million, and let's say you're right in the middle, right there at that sweet spot of 65%. So your profitability is $350,000. What if you could take 10% off of that? That's $100,000 back into your pocket for doing no more work. The proof is in my practice. You can easily be a sub 50% overhead practice. What I do is methodically once a month, I'm looking at each different component. I have 7 different components that I look at on an annual rotation. So I'll do it once a month or once every other month. I'm looking at our supply costs. I'm looking at our marketing costs. I'm looking at our lab costs. I'm looking at our staffing costs. We're looking at rent and all these different components that we're looking at. I'm reevaluating them, like sterilization costs. Like one of the most ridiculous costs that I felt we had in the beginning is the doctors that were in our practice before were having a service come in to launder, press, and starch their lab coats. And they came through twice a week. And we immediately looked at that expense and we're like, why don't we just put a washer and dryer in the break room and save that expense? And, this company is like, oh, your lab coats aren't going to get to the right temperature to sterilize the spores. And we're like, that's just a load of crap. They were washing the clothes. And so by doing that, we eliminated that fee. Another one, like Stericycle. Stericycle is one that people are notoriously locked into these contracts with these astronomical fees. So every month, I'm looking at a different component of our overhead and either reviewing it to make sure the cost has not gone up, or I'm renegotiating it to see if we can find a better option. And most times there are better options. You can play companies off of each other. The third component of that is I don't sign contracts. If I have to have a contract with you, that means there's a reason I want to leave you, or there will be a reason that I'm going to want to leave. And it's either because your service is going to go bad or you're going to increase my costs without justification. And that's a big red flag for me. I think I like to be flexible and nimble in our operating costs, so that way we can make changes if we want to. And sometimes it makes more sense to use a higher cost, either material or service, because it's going to save us time or create opportunities to do more dentistry in different ways.
It's not always cost. There's also the value. Like you mentioned with having the itero being added, was it a cost up front? Yeah, in a way, capital out the door to be able to purchase the equipment. And there's also the cost of logistically retraining people and making sure that the processes are getting put in there. Whenever you get a new person in, they got to learn how to do that thing. There's always cost, but the value that's derived from said expenditure or redesign or whatever it may be is where the real question comes into play on those things. And there's definitely times when value can overlap. As an example, one of the things that we did early on in our firm is we try to stake a pretty hard line of like, hey, we're not practice management consultants, because we would have people that would come to us and ask us all these practice management questions. I'm not a dentist. I don't own a dental practice. The famous one that I tell most people nowadays is I had someone who called, they've been a client of ours for maybe 3 or 4 months. And they're like, Jonathan, I'm disappointed because nobody's came out and shown me how to enter a treatment plan into open dental yet. And I'm like, that's not something that we do. We're not practice management consultants. We can't help you with those types of things. And I've got a laundry list of those different types of stories of people asking us to do. And so the way that we combat that is like telling people on the front, like, hey, we are not practice management consultants. And the reason is because most of these people have practice management consultants anyways. And so like, why are they paying us for what they think might be that advice? They're probably getting that in another place, right? There's a Venn diagram of value there and we're overlapping. So let's carve that out and be just very succinct and very open with the expectations. That's not something that we help with. So yeah, I think that's a great process of having the different categories to look at, looking at the different pieces of it, not having a contract. I think that's a great thing. Facebook message boards are littered with people saying, hey, I got into this contract with somebody and they're not letting me out of it. Why are you not letting me out of this contract? And everyone's like, yeah, they just don't let you out. I definitely hear you there. We have engagement letters with clients, but it's all month to month. And so we always say, hey, if you don't want to do business with us, then there's really no amount of money you could pay us to be doing business with you moving forward. And honestly, I tell people it goes both ways. We get a lot more pushback whenever we in the relationship more so than the other way around.
So that's it for today's episode. This is part 1. Tune in next week to part 2 to hear the brilliant conclusion to this episode.
Thanks for listening to the Tooth and Coin podcast. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review as well as a written review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps other dental professionals find our podcast and benefit from the financial insights that we share. So thanks for your support, and we'll catch you in the next episode where we'll continue to explore the business side of dentistry.